Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a pretty interesting topic, Valentine's Day and how it's viewed from an Islamic perspective. We're going to be looking at a fatwa from islam-qaa.com. It's basically like a religious ruling. And this one's written by scholar Muhammad Salih al-Munajjid, and it tackles this very question. Is it okay, for Muslims to celebrate Valentine's Day or not?
Yeah, it's a big question for sure. I mean, Valentine's Day is so popular almost everywhere you go. So this fatwa digs into both like the historical side of things and then, the reasoning behind the ruling itself should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that historical context because the fatwa actually starts there talking about the origins of Valentine's Day.
Right, like a lot of holidays, it goes way back. Valentine's Day, it's got roots in this old Roman festival, Lupercalia.
Okay, so remind me, what was Lupercalia all about?
Well, it involved like fertility rituals and animal sacrifice, and they'd do this matchmaking lottery. So yeah, pretty different from our modern Valentine's Day.
Wow, yeah, that's quite a contrast. And so this festival, the thought was saying, it kind of kept going even after the Romans converted to Christianity.
Exactly. It's like these old traditions, they just sort of morph and evolve over time. So eventually it transformed into what we know as Valentine's Day.
And there's that connection to Saint Valentine, who was executed on February 14th, way back in 270 CE.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The specific link between the saint and this like romantic celebration, it's actually pretty unclear.
Interesting. So we have this whole historical backdrop. But I guess the real question is, what does Islam say about celebrating it today?
Right. Well, the fatwa is pretty straightforward about that. It says celebrating Valentine's Day is not permissible for Muslims.
Okay, so no hearts and flowers for Muslim couples then.
Well, it's not quite that simple. There are specific reasons behind this prohibition. The fatwa lays out a few, like first there's the religious basis.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Well, Islam already has two major festivals of its own, right? Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. And bringing in other celebrations, it's seen as like an innovation, something that doesn't have a basis in the core teachings.
So it's about sticking to the established practices.
Exactly. And the fatwa actually quotes a hadith, which is a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It says, "Whoever introduces anything into this matter of ours that is not part of it will have it rejected."
That's a pretty strong statement. It really emphasizes the importance of following those established practices.
Absolutely. Another big point the fatwa brings up is the idea of imitating non-Muslims.
Okay, and that's discouraged in Islam.
Right. There's another hadith that says whoever imitates a people is one of them. So celebrating a holiday with roots in like Roman and Christian traditions could be seen as falling into that category.
So it's about maintaining a distinct identity and not just adopting practices from other cultures without thinking it through.
Yeah, and that leads to some interesting questions like how do Muslims navigate global trends while staying true to their beliefs?
Right? Because it's not about rejecting everything from other cultures, more nuanced than that.
Exactly. It's about looking at how things align with Islamic teachings. Some scholars even say there's a difference between harmless cultural exchange and adopting practices that clash with Islamic values.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about making conscious choices. So the fatwa brings up these religious and cultural considerations, but are there any ethical concerns about Valentine's Day as well?
Yeah, definitely. The fatwa mentions the potential for Valentine's Day to lead to things considered haram actions forbidden in Islam.
And we're not talking about some vague idea of immorality here. The fatwa gets specific, right?
Right. It points to concerns about extravagance, like lavish gifts and parties.
Which would go against the Islamic principle of moderation.
Exactly. There's also an issue of mixed gatherings and behaviors that promote physical intimacy outside of marriage.
And those are very clearly prohibited in Islam, so it's not just about the historical roots of the holiday, but also about the way it might be celebrated in a way that goes against Islamic values.
Right? You've got those religious principles, the cultural sensitivities, and the ethical considerations all kind of layered together.
So with all those concerns, is this just one scholar's personal opinion, or does this represent a broader view within Islam?
That's a good question, and the fatwa actually addresses that by citing opinions from other respected scholars too, like Sheikh Ibn Uthaymin.
Okay, and
He was a very influential scholar from Saudi Arabia, known for his pretty conservative interpretations.
so it's not just a fringe view then?
No, not at all. The fatwa also mentions the Standing Committee for Scholarly Research and IFTA,
And they are.
a group of senior Islamic scholars in Saudi Arabia responsible for issuing fatwas on all sorts of matters. Basically, they're like the authority.
Okay, so they carry a lot of weight, and what about them? Do they agree with the Valentine's Day prohibition?
Yep, they support it. And then there's Sheikh Ibn Jibreen, another prominent scholar known for his strict adherence to traditional Islamic law.
So we're seeing a pretty clear consensus here. It's not just one person's take on this.
Right, and that consensus adds a lot of weight to the fatwa's ruling. It shows that this view about Valentine's Day is pretty widespread within the Islamic scholarly community.
So now that we know this is a widely held view, I'm curious how it actually plays out in daily life. Like, what are the practical implications of this ruling?
Well, the fatwa gets into that too. It gives some guidelines for Muslims saying they shouldn't participate in any activities related to Valentine's Day.
So that means no gifts, no red roses, no romantic
Yep,
dinners.
even promoting the holiday is out. And get this, even selling Valentine's Day stuff is considered problematic if the seller knows the buyer is going to use it for the celebration.
Wow. So even just participating in the commercial side of things is off limits. That shows how seriously this matter is taken.
Right. It's about being mindful of those religious principles, even in seemingly mundane actions like buying and selling goods.
So you're in a society where Valentine's Day is everywhere you look. How do you navigate that as a Muslim? That must be tough.
Oh, definitely. It can lead to some tricky situations. Like, imagine trying to explain to a coworker why you're not joining in on the Valentine's Day potluck at the office, or a kid in school trying to explain why they're not giving out cards.
You're right. It really highlights the need for understanding and sensitivity from both sides. It's about respecting different beliefs, even when they might seem unusual or unfamiliar.
Exactly. And it also speaks to how resilient faith can be, even in environments where your beliefs are different from what everyone else is hearing. It can push you to be more mindful and intentional about how you live your life.
So how do Muslims navigate those kinds of situations where they're surrounded by Valentine's Day celebrations, but want to stay true to their beliefs?
Well, a lot of it comes down to communication. Like that Muslim student, they might explain to their classmates why they're not exchanging Valentine's Day cards, but maybe they could offer alternative ways to show friendship and appreciation.
That's a great idea, like focusing on the spirit of kindness and connection without the specific trappings of the holiday.
Right. And in the workplace, a Muslim employee could politely decline to participate in the festivities, but still maintain positive relationships with their colleagues.
It's about finding that balance, upholding personal beliefs while fostering a sense of community and respect.
Exactly. And it's worth remembering that even within the Muslim community, there are different perspectives on how to approach these situations.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing?
No, definitely not. Some Muslims might choose to completely avoid anything related to Valentine's Day, while others might find ways to adapt certain aspects in a way that aligns with their Islamic values.
So there's room for individual interpretation and choice.
Absolutely. And I think recognizing that diversity of thought and experience is really important. It gives us a much richer understanding of how faith is actually lived and practiced in the real world.
Yeah, it's not just about the rules on paper. It's about how people actually make those rules meaningful in their own lives. So this hot dog gives us a clear picture of the Islamic ruling on Valentine's Day, but it also opens up this whole conversation about cultural sensitivity and interfaith dialogue.
And the individual ways that people navigate their beliefs within a diverse society, it's all connected.
It makes you think about how important it is to approach those differences with curiosity and empathy. Instead of judging or dismissing beliefs that we don't understand, we should try to learn from each other and build bridges of understanding.
Couldn't agree more. I think open dialogue and respectful engagement are crucial for creating a more inclusive and harmonious society. That's where it all starts.
And in those moments of genuine connection, when we recognize our shared humanity, that's when we can really appreciate the beauty of diversity. It's not about erasing differences, it's about understanding and respecting them.
Well said. I think this deep dive has been a great example of that. We've explored the Islamic perspective on Valentine's Day, but also these bigger themes of cultural exchange, individual beliefs, and finding common ground amidst our differences.
Absolutely. It's been an insightful and thought-provoking journey, for sure. And it makes me even more excited for our next deep dive, where we'll tackle another fascinating topic and hopefully spark even more of those valuable conversations. Yeah, it really does make you think about those everyday situations and how people navigate them. It's one thing to read a fatwa, but it's another to actually live it out.
Oh, for sure. It's like translating those principles into real-world actions, and that can be tricky sometimes.
Absolutely, especially when you're living in a society that's so immersed in Valentine's Day. Like, how do Muslim communities respond to the holiday in general?
It's interesting, there's actually quite a bit of diversity in how it's approached.
Really?
Yeah, some communities might be like super strict about it, actively discouraging any kind of Valentine's Day observance.
Okay, so no red roses, no chocolates, no romantic dinners.
Right, while other communities might be a bit more lenient, allowing for expressions of love and affection as long as they stay within the boundaries of Islamic teachings.
So there's not like a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly, and it's important to remember that even within Islam, there are different schools of thought, different interpretations of the text.
Right, so some Muslims might see this Valentine's Day prohibition as absolute, while others might see some wiggle room, like maybe there's space for cultural adaptation or personal choices.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It's a complex issue with a lot of different perspectives, and that's something we always need to keep in mind, especially when we're talking about faith and culture.
So while this fatwa is helpful in understanding the general Islamic stance, it's just one piece of a bigger puzzle, right?
Absolutely. It sparks this broader conversation about how Islam interacts with all these contemporary cultural trends.
Which is a topic we could probably spend hours discussing, but for now, I think it's important to remember that love and affection are universal experiences.
Oh, definitely. They transcend cultures and religions.
Right, so while Valentine's Day itself might be off limits, that underlying sentiment of love, of appreciation for your loved ones, that's still very much valued in Islam.
Huge emphasis on that. And there are other ways to express those feelings that align with Islamic principles.
Like what?
Well, for instance, Muslims are encouraged to show kindness and generosity towards their loved ones all year round, not just on one specific day.
So it's about weaving those acts of love into your everyday life.
Precisely, and of course, Islam places immense importance on marriage as this sacred bond.
And spouses are encouraged to express love and affection for each other?
Absolutely, within the framework of their faith, of course. So even though Valentine's Day might not be part of Islamic tradition, there are still so many beautiful ways for Muslims to celebrate love and build strong, meaningful relationships.
It's about finding those alternative expressions that resonate with your beliefs and your personal values.
Exactly, and those expressions, they can be just as powerful, if not more so, than any store-bought card or bouquet of flowers.
That's such a great point. It's a good reminder that sometimes the most meaningful gestures are the ones that come from the heart and that don't require any special occasion. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface here. You know, there's so much more we could explore about love and relationships in Islam.
Oh, definitely. It's a rich and complex topic and one that's often misunderstood.
Yeah, that's why I think these deep dives are so important. You know, we're taking the time to really understand different perspectives and hopefully break down some of those stereotypes and misconceptions.
Exactly. It's all about fostering understanding and respect, which is so crucial in today's world.
Well said. And you know what? I think this conversation about Valentine's Day, it might even spark some introspection for listeners who do celebrate the holiday.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, it makes you think about what we're actually celebrating. You know, is it just about commercialism and pressure to be romantic?
Or is there something deeper there?
Right? Like, what are our own personal values and beliefs when it comes to love and relationships? And how do those align with how we celebrate Valentine's Day?
I love that. It's like this conversation has prompted us to look inward as well.
Exactly. And maybe it even opens up conversations with our loved ones about how they view Valentine's Day, what their expectations are, what truly matters to them in expressing love and appreciation.
It's all about communication, right? Whether it's between different cultures or different faiths or even just between two people in a relationship.
Communication is key, always. Well, we've definitely covered a lot of ground today. Any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Just this, I think it's so important to embrace that spirit of curiosity, the one that led you to listen to this deep dive in the first place.
Curiosity is what drives us to learn and grow.
Exactly. So keep asking questions, keep seeking out different perspectives, and keep engaging with the world around you with an open mind and an open heart.
Beautiful said. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of exploration. We'll be back soon with another deep dive. So until then, keep learning, keep those questions coming, and most importantly, keep the conversation going.